Good afternoon, everybody. Call this meeting to order of the Board of Trustees Governance Trusteeship and Nominating Committee. Thank you for joining us for today's meetings. This is a meeting of the Governance Committee of the U of L Board of Trustees. I will now call the roll. Scott Brinkman, here. Mary Nixon.
Here.
Diane Porter.
Here.
Jim Rogers.
Here.
Krista Wallace-Boas.
Here.
Thank you. Having determined a quorum present, I would like to call this meeting to order. One reminder, please remember to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Before we begin today's agenda, I'd like to make a few acknowledgements. First, I'd like to welcome our newest trustees, Diane Porter and Al Cornish. Diane, Al, welcome to the board. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
I always defer to Diane first, so we'll let Diane introduce herself first.
Why did I know you were going to do that?
Because I love you.
Good afternoon. I am Diane Porter. I am very honored to serve as a member of the Board of Trustees from the University of Louisville. I won't give you my life story in education, but I do want everyone to know that I graduated from the U of L maybe before some of you were born. I have more than one degree from the University of Louisville, and it is my honor and my pleasure to be on this Board of Trustees. And I am a lifelong educator. Again, I will not give you the long or short version of that today. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
And I'm Al Cornish, and I am certainly also honored to be serving on the board. And I really appreciate the governor appointing me to the board. I'm not a U of L graduate, but I'm a U of L follower and supporter. And I am just honored to be here and hopefully can contribute in some small way. From a professional standpoint, I previously worked for Norton Healthcare, and I was the chief learning officer until I retired at the end of 2018. And now I have a small consulting business, Closing the Gap Consulting LLC, where I work with organizations to help them to create healthy workplace climates. And I'm doing quite a bit of work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space right now. So I'm staying pretty busy. So I'm really glad to be here with you, and will try my best to help in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane and Al, and we certainly look forward to working with both of you on the Board of Trustees. Next, I'd like to recognize Krista Wallace-Boas, as these are her last meetings as the faculty constituency representative on the Board of Trustees. Her successor, David Schultz, will take the helm as faculty senate chair and our colleague on the board beginning October 7th. Krista, would you like to say a few words and introduce Dr. Schultz?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Scott. It's just been an honor to work with each of you over the past 2 years. I really miss you. I was a student at U of L from 1988 to 1992 and then joined faculty in 2000. And it's just wonderful to serve with a board that's just as deeply committed to the university and shares my love for the university. So thank you. I just appreciate each and every one of you, and I'm going to miss you. And just a note to Neely. Neely, what an honor it's been to serve with you and be a part of your first years here and to share your deep commitment to shared governance. So thank you so much. And it's now my honor to introduce to you the incoming chair of the Faculty Senate, David Schultz. And David, I believe you're on the Teams meeting. If you would be willing to turn your video on so we can all greet you and say hello. David is a professor of biology and specializes in biochemistry, biotechnology, and bioactivity of plant material. He is the chair of the Arts and Sciences Assembly, and he's been an integral member of the Faculty Senate's Planning and Budget Committee. And so I know I leave you in great hands with David. I look forward to you meeting him and working with him. And I also can't wait to welcome each of you to the School of Music. So I hope that you will come and visit and we can all be together again in the future. So thank you so much.
Dr. Schultz?
Oh, okay. I didn't know if I was supposed to say that. Hello, I'm very happy to be here, and I hope that I can take over for Krista in an equitable manner, and I still will be relying on her for help. This is an overwhelming amount of things to learn in a short amount of time. So look forward to working with everyone.
Great. Thank you, Krista and David. And certainly we're going to formally recognize Krista for her service at our October 28th board meeting. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of the July 16th, 2020 meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Second.
I have a second. That was what, Krista on the motion, and
Jim
Who was
Rogers
the
on the
second?
second.
got it. Great, Jim. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? The motion carries and the minutes stand approved. Our next item of business is the election of a secretary of the Board of Trustees. And at this point, I'll ask our board chair, Mary Nixon, to brief us and to lead the discussion. Mary?
Thank you, Scott. As you've just referenced, the board has made new appointments to our board, which secretary. If you recall, former Secretary Benita Black served in that role. And as we have looked at this, obviously we have selected Mr. Brinkman to fill this vacancy. So I would like to make a motion that we elect Scott Brinkman to fill the vacancy of the position of Secretary of the Board.
Thank you, Mary. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Hearing none, is there a second to Mary's motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor, signify aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion carries. I did meet with Benita for several hours today, and certainly I have very, very big shoes to fill. But certainly will give it my very best, but it's an honor. Our next action item is the approval of the administrative regulation that was in the board packet. Actually, in consultation with our board chair, in deference to our two new members, in particular, Diane Porter, who serves on this committee. At this point, I'd like to have a discussion of the administrative regulation, give all the members of the board the opportunity to ask questions. There's some sensitivity to the regulation because of its topic, but I think the best thing to do is have Sandy Russell brief us on the administrative regulation, and then I'm going to suggest we defer to the next meeting for actual action on the administrative regulation. Sandy, if you would brief us on this administrative regulation, we'd be very, very appreciative.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity. The material that we provided you is a new administrative reg in process. And this administrative reg addresses the restriction that the university currently has under a KRS. That's KRS 164.321. This KRS prohibits teaching and administrative staff from having an interest in a contract for the sale or purchase of property, materials, equipment, or services with the university unless it's been approved by the Board of Trustees. And this new administrative reg is going to provide the mechanism and process for that reconsideration for the teaching and administrative staff. So in the materials you have the administrative reg, and then we've laid out the process that would take place for this reconsideration. Did you have any specific questions, or if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to try to answer those.
Sandy, this is Mary. Can you remind me who reviews these before they come to the Board of Trustees?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I just want to say that there will probably be very few that actually would make it to the Board of Trustees. If you want, you can see in the process, these are going to go to the Conflict Review Board. And the Conflict Review Board is going to look at these and make a determination. We will try to manage these through a management agreement, but the process is first to the review board. Then from the review board, their recommendation would come to me, the VP, for risk audit and compliance. And then I would either consider their recommendation with modifications, or either agree with them that we should not pursue this. And any of these that are not pursued would not go to the Board of Trustees.
Well, I think you answered almost another one of my questions, because you said there are only a few of these that would probably come to the board, but I wonder, is a few 20 or 5, or, I mean, how many of these might we be entertaining in a year?
Well, my understanding was, and even when a conversation was had with the UK, because they have a similar administrative reg, that very few, my understanding was 1 or 2, maybe less a year. So we're talking very few would make it to the Board of Trustees.
Well, I've read the regulation several times, and I want to commend the drafters. I know a lot of thought went into it, and I think it's very well written. Certainly has, I believe, appropriate checks and balances. But again, to make sure that every member of the board, including our newest board members, have the opportunity to review the reg, if necessary, the underlying state law. I would like to defer this until the October meeting. I just feel that it's a sensitive topic, not in actuality, but in theory at least, and just want to make sure all of the members of the board are completely comfortable with the administrative regulation. But Sandy, I do appreciate your work, and certainly it's a very well drafted, well thought out regulation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Legal, and we worked very hard on it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and Scott, let me just make a point of clarification for Diane and Al, that, it's pretty typical for all members of the trustees to attend all the committee meetings, whether you are on the committee or not. And while you may not be a voting member of the committee, to the extent you have questions or want clarification about something that comes up with the committee that you're not necessarily on, you certainly have the ability and right to ask questions and make comments.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Mary, for making that clear.
Scott, this is Raymond. I got 2, maybe 3 questions regarding the document. I guess first, in reviewing, and this is something they can check for when it comes back. There's reference in the document to a COI officer and a reference to COIC officer. What's the difference?
Sandy, you're the COI officer.
I am. And, I would think that probably was just an extra C. So we'll definitely clean that up.
Okay, so that's one. Second is, in looking at the way the process has been laid out, it appears in some instances the recommendation comes directly from the committee or the COI officer to the board, and not through the president with a recommendation from the president. Was that intended?
No, actually, any recommendation I would take to the president for her to present to the Board of Trustees. It's going to be transmitted from the president to the Board of Trustees. So the president will definitely be involved.
So before you bring it back, you need to look at that flow process. And in the examples, and I was trying to apply the principle that I thought was there. And it seemed that in the first one it worked, and the second one it didn't work, and the third one was fine. So you just need to check that when you go back.
Sure, be happy to.
Yeah, let's check those scenarios that are the 4 that are listed. I think there are 4, but I know in section 5 it looks as if the chain of command is clearly the conflict review board, and then the CIO, then the university president, then the Board of Trustees. as I read section 5.
Yes, and that should also be in the process that I think we have in there. So we'll just make sure that that's extra clear.
Yeah, thank you, Raymond. And your third point?
That's it. I'm finished. I thought I did 3.
Oh, okay, sorry. Any other comments, questions regarding the reg?
Yeah, Scott, this is John Chilton. I had a question about how the university becomes aware of potential conflicts that would come under this regulation.
Sandy, I'll defer to you, but I assume there's an obligation to report on the behalf of everyone covered within the scope of this regulation.
Yes, there's the ADF forms that are completed through our reporting system. Yes, we have a process for that.
So John, this is Mary. Is your question about whether any that did not come forward to the Board of Trustees, that we would know about those too, or just because my understanding the way this flow works is the only ones we'll ever see are the ones that are being recommended by the committee and by the president?
Yeah, my question was, how does the committee become aware of potential conflicts in contracts with the university? Is that a part of each contract, or how does that work?
So
is there an affirmation that there are no conflicts or no interested parties?
So I think part of that, John, would arise through the annual disclosure form that was referenced, which all university employees are required to complete each year, and to update if there is any a change in the information that's provided under that form. And in that form, if you are doing business with or have any interest in any outside company, that's disclosed in that form so that the university is aware of it and a management plan could be in place. And then as a contract, in a contract situation, this whole process, of course, is overlaid with the procurement process for any contract, whether there's an RFP for the particular service or good, then the company in which an employee had an interest would have to participate in that RFP process, or if it were a sole source contract, then it would go through the sole source process, but then have to go through this process in addition to, in order to clear the conflict of interest under the regulation.
So do 100% of the employees at the university complete one of those forms every year?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's an online form, and it's tracked. And if you don't respond in a timely manner, they come knocking on your door.
Yes, we do.
Any other questions, comments relative to the regulation? And I'll move on to our next item on the agenda. And again, in consultation with our board chair, Mary Nixon, I'm suggesting that we defer taking action on this next item, which is the proposed revised memorandum of understanding between the university and the University of Louisville Foundation. Again, this is a sensitive topic, and to ensure that all of our board members have the opportunity to study and consider the document, including our newest board members, and to have a complete opportunity to ask questions, to gain as great an understanding of this document and the history of the relationship between the two institutions. I'm going to suggest we defer taking formal action, but I would ask that our General Counsel, Tom Hoy, just review the proposed MOU with the board at this time.
Sure. Good afternoon. So in the materials that you received in preparation for this meeting, you got a 3-page memorandum or memo, which was originally prepared by me for Dr. Bendapudi to explain to her what we were proposing. And by we, I mean the lawyers for the foundation and the lawyers for the university. As described in that memo, the current relationship between the university and the foundation is governed by two documents. One is a memorandum of understanding that was signed in July of 2017, and then a further agreement that was signed later that same year in December, which is called a management representation and indemnity agreement. And those two agreements together, particularly the MRIA, include a number of restrictions and limitations on the ability of the ULF board to take action in the management of foundation operations without the concurrence or affirmative vote of the Board of Trustees. The sense of the university and the foundation leadership at this point is that the relationship between the foundation and the university has, pardon my microphone, I'm in the office and UPS planes tend to fly over this time of day, so you may get a few airplane noises. Was that the relationship between the foundation and the university has improved, and that some of these restrictions may not be necessary any longer. For example, there was a restriction that the University of Louisville Foundation not have an executive committee for its board. That inhibits their ability to take action between board meetings without calling a full board meeting. And so we didn't feel that that continued restriction was necessary. The memo outlines kind of point by point what is proposed to be changed, or what would be changed between the current existing two agreements and the new agreement that would replace them. And I won't go through all of those points. I'm happy to go through them if you want me to, but you can read. And I'm sure if you have any questions, I'm happy to address them, or we can gather further answers if I don't have them, so that when the committee meets and the board meets in October, we'll have answers for any additional questions I might not be able to answer today.
Fair enough. Any questions, comments from members of the board? Okay, well, certainly, Tom, we appreciate that offer, and let's make sure, see if we can get as much accomplished between now and the 28th as possible. That is the last item on our agenda. So, having no other business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Scott. Randy, we are ready for you to begin if you are ready.
I am ready, and again, welcome everybody. And this is going to actually be the meeting of the Human Resource Committee of the Board of Trustees. And first and foremost, before I call the roll, we would like to welcome new trustee Al Cornish to be serving with us, and knowing his great background of work, which continues today through his consulting company. We're excited to add him to this committee, and for the great work that we're going to be doing on the employee experience in the future. So first and foremost, roll call. Randy Bufford, here. Al Cornish.
Here.
Sandra Fraser.
Here.
Jim Rogers.
Here.
And John Smith.
Here, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Randy, that's a typo. Krista Wallace Boaz is the constituency representative on this, and
there you go.
Following her departure, it will be David Schultz. So that would be.
Well,
yes, thank you.
and they are here.
And
so
I'm here.
Absolutely. I did have a question, Jake, just for informational purposes for the future. We call roll, but when we can see people like we are in a room together, would we have to do that?
We are siding on the safe side of things since we're all
I figured there was a lawyer involved. Okay, thank you. Having determined that there is a quorum present for this great committee, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And of course, the first item is always approval of the minutes. Our last meeting was September 18th, 2018. So I might ask the members who were present and part of that meeting to have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
A second, please.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition or abstention? Having noted none, the motion is carried. The next item of business we have, which is a really good one, is going to be presented by actually Mary Elizabeth Miles, who is recently appointed August 1st as the new Vice President of Human Resources for the University of Louisville. And I can tell you from my work pre-committee with Mary Elizabeth, it is a blessing to have her 10 years of service here at the university, plus I think over 20, even though she probably would not want me to say that relative to potential age conflicts of HR experience leading us in this area. But we have a somewhat high level presentation that she's going to go through. And then after that, I'm going to poll the committee on items we'd like to consider at our next meeting in December. So Mary Elizabeth, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate it. And good afternoon, everyone. It is really an honor to be able to speak with you all today and talk to you a little bit about HR. Before we start the slide deck, I just wanted to share with you that there were some questions that Randy had for me about where does HR really fit in the university. And so very quickly, I just want you to know that in higher education, we have a human resources department, we have a faculty affairs office, and that faculty affairs office takes care of hiring for our faculty. And they also take care of some personnel issues as it relates to faculty. And we are blessed here at the university to also have a business operations team, and they take care of all the hires that are temporary. So all of our lecturers, if we just have temporary employees that we need for clerical reasons, those kinds of things, our student workers, they take care of all of those. So Randy just thought it'd be a good idea if I just gave you an idea of all the people that we partner with to make sure that all the human resources needs for the university are taken care of. So I'm going to just start, and Randy and I agreed that it would be really nice for me to share what the challenges and the strengths are as it relates to our staff in this moment in time. And so what I did was I had the ability to use the existing committee we have for HR, which has representatives of all of our constituency groups, as well as other stakeholders and partners in human resources. And so I just simply asked them, give me your top three as far as challenges and, do the same for strengths. And so what we found, and you all will probably not be surprised, but the first challenge is the racial and the political tension that we have, not just at the university, but just, in the world. And so certainly they made that clear, and it is certainly understandable. Those were followed by pay and career progression. So what I will say before I move on to our strengths is this. As it relates to the three areas, and I'll just repeat them just because I might be speaking a little quickly: racial and political tension, pay, and career progression. All of those things that I've just mentioned are a part of our strategic plan. And if you recall, when you look at the strategic plan, we have talked about these items in different ways, and we have several committees that know that these are in the forefront. So what I was pleased with is that we are pretty consistent with regards to the areas that we know are on top of the mind for our employees. And that came true through the conversation that I had with the HR Advisory Committee. So moving on to our strengths, there was a common theme that the university and its employees are resilient, and I don't think that's going to be a surprise to you all at all. They talked about how family-oriented we are, the policies and the benefits we have, how we really care about, our employees, but also we care about their families. And then finally, they talked about just the great pride and love that they have for the university. And so I just wanted to say, they made it very clear that much of this comes from our president's leadership, and just knowing that in the little time that Neely has been here, that they've just seen a shift and has really given us an opportunity to move forward in a way that is positive and makes them very proud of being in the university. So I want to just close out by sharing with you that we have climate studies that we have done, and I wanted to just share with you what our most recent climate studies are. For two of these, we don't have the results published yet, and those are the bottom two, the ones that were for the entire university, and that's the Chronicle of Higher Education, and then the Harvard study that looked at faculty. But we do have our results as it relates to the diversity and climate survey. And again, I really feel like we captured that same sentiment in the challenges that I talked to you all about. So moving on, as it relates to our healthcare for 2021, I'm happy to say that in HR, we have had a group of employees that have been working with HR and began a benefits. We have a benefits committee that helps us and advises us on what is it that they want to see in our healthcare plans. And so for 2021, very quickly, just wanted to let you know what changes we have and just a couple of updates. So as far as our PPO, there is going to be an increase of $5 for the copay, as well as our EPO, and the specialist copay for PPO, and that's going to be from $30 to $35. Currently, we have an HRA that allows us to roll over 3 times the money each year, and so we are scaling that back. We find that there are lots of dollars that are left on the table, but knowing that we are going to scale this back, we are going to give any employees that currently have more than 1 time of the contribution until December 31, 2024 to spend those dollars. Specialty medications, we are limiting those to a 30-day supply at a time, and that is clearly, it's cost savings and it is a benefit to all employees, in that we want to make sure that if there is a specialty medication that they need, that it's the right one before they get a 90-day supply. Generic maintenance drugs, through our mail order, are going to have a 0 copay, and so we're really excited about that. And then finally, we are not going to have any premium increases for employees if they stay in the same healthcare plan that they have currently today. And then finally, I just wanted to let you know that we had an extension as it relates to our COVID-19 diagnostic testing, as well as our telehealth. We had this all through the summer where there were 0 copays, and we've recently extended that through the end of the year. So moving forward, I just want to share with you that this committee, our HR committee for the Board of Trustees, you will be surprise if you didn't know, but you're going to be our oversight in conjunction with our president for the Benefits Administrative Committee that we put together. At the university, we didn't have a formal plan administrator over our retirement plans. And so we recognize that that is very important for many reasons. And when I speak about our plans, I'm talking about our 403B and our 457B plans. So our committee will be responsible for doing lots of things. And let me tell you, my director of total rewards already has us moving full speed on the RFP that we put out for an investment advisor. And I just want you to know that we really want to make sure that we are compliant with all the laws and regulations that we are held accountable for. We want to maintain low participant fees, and we want to use that investment advisor and their expertise to make sure that we are doing best practices, that we're managing our plan appropriately, that we have the right that the performance of our funds and our portfolios are where they need to be so that we can be most successful in supporting our employees and their long-term goals. And last but not least, I wanted to share that we have two initiatives that are going to be pretty heavy lifting for HR, just so you know. In addition to all the other things that we do, we are looking at a faculty and staff compensation and total reward study. And this has been a long time in the making. And I just want you to know that we have completed the RFP and we have the final draft communications for our community. And so in the coming weeks, we will be issuing that RFP. And last but not least, HR has the opportunity to be first in line for a new enterprise resource planning system. And we're excited. It's going to take a lot of work. It'll probably be at least a 2-year project, but just wanted you to know that I will be updating you in the coming months of where we land as it relates to this. And Randy teased me a little bit because I can't do anything but smile. And I think about having a new system that will really help us move forward in a positive, more effective way so that we can better serve our customers. So just know HR is taking the time now to really look at our processes so that we can make the most of this this new system and really, move us forward as it relates to how we serve our customers. So I know I gave you lots of updates. Do you have any questions for me? I'm happy to answer those.
I've got a question. This is Jim Rogers.
Hi, Jim.
Hi. On the healthcare plan changes, is Dan Durbin's office tied in with this?
Well, sure. I mean, yes, all things money.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Dan makes it his business to be in at the table when we're making these decisions. Yes.
Good.
Yeah, and Jim, that was part of the budget planning process for this year, where we chose what we were going to fund and what we were going to not, what we weren't going to fund. And one of the decisions we made was to not pass the increased health insurance cost back to the employees, but rather integrate it within the budget.
Okay. Good.
Thank you, Dan. Well, if there are no questions, I just want to say, Randy, I really look forward to working with you and committee members. I just really look forward to hearing your ideas and receiving your feedback. I just think that we're going to have a really good time trying to move the university forward in new and innovative ways. So thank you for agreeing to serve, and just know we will absolutely keep you busy and you will not be bored.
Hey, Mary Elizabeth, 2 questions, please.
Yes.
Number one, in the different surveys, of which you have only the results back on one, I don't remember the board seeing or hearing of the results from the one of last fall.
Okay.
Could you share that? Share that with us? That's number one. Number two, my second question is, with members of this committee now taking on the role in terms of the BAC committee, is
Yes.
there some added insurance and coverage and indemnification for them?
Oh, that's a good question. Tom, can you help me with that one?
So the members of the BAC committee are not trustees. The BAC is administrators, employees who will be carrying out those activities, and then they'll be reporting their work through this Human Resources Committee to the board. So the same insurance that the board has always had in place for its oversight, D&O coverage would continue, but it will be, the hope is that this committee will help the board do a better job of overseeing the retirement plans than has been the case in the past.
Okay, maybe I guess I misunderstood. I thought they said they were going to become part of the committee, not a review or oversight committee.
No, sir. The BAC is composed, Mary Elizabeth can tell me if I get this wrong. It's the vice president for HR, the head of total rewards. It's the general counsel or somebody from my office. It's somebody from risk management, Sandy's office. And there's a fifth position that
Dan, the CFO.
That's right, CFO is on it. And then there are also 3 or 4 additional members who are not there by virtue of their specific position, but because they are individuals that bring particular perspectives or talents to the committee. And I don't remember the names of those individuals right now.
I'm one of those, but they are on they're on rolling terms as well.
Right. It is Vince Tyra, Jose Fernandez, Jared Neal, and Mike Kramer. And the 2 of those positions, one is held by a faculty senate member, and the other is by a staff senate member.
Hey, Mary Elizabeth, this is John.
Yes, John.
Hey, I've got 2 questions. Maybe dive into the rationale for the reduction of the 3-time HRA carryover to the 1-time, because maybe there's something about it that I don't understand. Aren't some of those funds money that are contributed by the employee?
No.
To their fund? Okay, so they're all from university, but once they're, what happens to the money that's recouped when we eliminate that from 3 times to 1 time? Or I'm missing something here in the rationale for that move.
Okay, and I have my colleague Todd Neal on the phone, so if I get this wrong, you help me, Todd. Well, I mean, those funds go back to the university when the employees don't spend them. They don't follow them, and that's why we were looking at a new plan, an HRA, an HSA, a health savings plan, so that the dollars that the contributions that the university gives to employees in those cases and the contributions they make will stay with them forever.
Okay.
These
That's
do not.
That's what it was. I had the HRA and the HSA mixed in my head.
Yes.
So that's where I was going with that. Thank you.
Okay.
The other question was, when you were talking about the copays, will we continue the 0 copay if we use certain physicians in our network, like at Cardinal Station?
If it is currently that way, yes.
Okay.
The only changes that we made for copays were for telehealth and for COVID-related diagnostic testing. And so those are the only 0 copays we added. But if they were already a part of our plan as 0 copays based on, which physicians you saw, that remains the same. Nothing will change.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any more questions? Hearing none, thank you very much, Mary Elizabeth. We appreciate that report. And we likewise are excited about working on these matters around our employee experience. We know it's central to everything in being successful. whether it's a university or a business or a coalition of people coming together. The employee experience is everything. So we're charged up like you are. Now I'm going to open it up to the committee to now that you've heard a little bit, to give us some ideas on things that we should be thinking about and working on between now and our next meeting. And of course, I always have a few. I think Mary Elizabeth was learning that about me. But one that I just wanted to alert the entire Board of Trustees to is, and it was not able to because of how the transition of U of L Health is coming over time, we're going to try to bring our health plan together closer to where there will be incentives to drive volumes, business, and referrals, if you will, to our own university-affiliated healthcare entities. And, of course, with the timing of open, re-enrollments and a January 1st renewal, we didn't get to make a lot of progress on this year, but we are talking about it. We are working towards that. And I think you will see in the future that will help lower our costs for our employees. And that's what we want to do. We want to do everything possible in our health plan to create wellness and and that includes financial wellness and having the ability to, do business with ourselves, if you will. And I know they are two separate legal entities, but again, we want to see how we can move forward with that. And then secondarily, we have two very large employee groups. If you think about approximately about the same number of employees between U of L Health and the University of Louisville. And so we'll be looking in the future at a way to leverage that combined group and bidding things to make sure that we take advantage of synergies, that come from being larger and being together, and also trying to create equity. These are all long-term things. It won't be overnight, between the employee experience at U of L Health and the employee experience at the University of Louisville. And so we don't have people hopping from one organization to another to try to achieve, some financial gain, if you will. So again, we're excited about those. And then my third one, which is more one that I'd love to, I'm gonna have to learn some from you, but also challenge ourselves to think about is as the pandemic moves on, it's apparent to, I think, most everybody, the economy is going to come under continued pressure. And I want to understand more about what the university has today in employee assistance programs, to support our employees that are under pressure financially, stress-wise, their mental health, you name it. And I also want to learn a little bit more about, how the university as a collective group of employees takes care of each other. Do we have an internal foundation, for example, that employees can give to that would be administered and given to other employees in times of need? I've seen organizations do fabulous work where the employees take care of each other in times of need in a formal way through donations of money, services, PTO. I mean, there's tax rules around that. But again, just to kind of create that caring culture that goes along with our cardinal principles. So I will be quiet now and tell you that my next one for the next meeting, I'd love to have an opportunity to learn more about how we're thinking about the stresses our employees are under through the pandemic financially, and from a wellness standpoint as well, and what type of resources are being made available. And I know they're out there. A lot of this will be education to us, but then I think also some brainstorming about what further we can do and what resources the university we can leverage to the benefit of our employees and especially their families, because we'll see the employees having a job, because they're with us every day or remotely with us, but we may not be aware that the husband or spouse or other has lost their job due to the economy, and that just brings on a whole different things of those in childcare. So. Other items from the committee members that we'd like to talk about?
Yeah, this is Al Cornish. You covered a couple of the ones that I wanted to talk about, specifically around what are we doing currently around wellness, health, and financial. So you hit both of those. And I was also concerned about the EAP because of the stressful times that employees are dealing with. And my third was around the DE&I strategy that we're employing at the university. And I'd love to have and hear more about that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Al. Great advice. Anybody else? Well, good. Well, thank you, everybody, for your participation. Again, thanks to Mary Elizabeth Miles, as well as her team, for pulling together a great deal of information, of which you all just saw a thumbnail sketch today, trust me, of the information as we get up to speed on the great things that are being done for our employees. No further action is required on anything that we've discussed. We'll just bring that to the committee for our next meeting. Having no other business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to end this meeting?
So moved.
A second, please.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Raymond, we're ready if you are.
I'm ready to go. First of all, good afternoon. This is the meeting of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee of the Board of Trustees. I will now call the roll. Raymond Burse here. Sabrina Collins.
Here.
Sandra Frazier.
Here.
Diane Porter.
Here.
Krista Wallace Boaz.
Here.
Having determined a quorum is present, I'd like to call this meeting to order. The first thing I would like to do is to welcome Diane Porter, not only to the board, but to this committee. Diane, this is the hardest working committee of all the committees on the board. So let's get ready to have a good time in terms of things, but it's great to see you and great to have you on board with us. First item of business is the approval of the minutes of the June 25th, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion from a committee member to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstention? The motion carries. Our next item of business is the approval of a certificate in healthcare leadership. Professor Bain, would you brief the committee?
Sure. I'd also like to welcome Diane Porter to this and second Dr. Burse's claim that this is the most important committee. It oversees both students and academic programs. So I think it is important. Today's meeting, though, however, is not so long. We have just two items from me. The approval of the healthcare leadership program, and that program is just a 12 credit hour undergraduate certificate that can go along with another degree or can be taken only as a certificate. The purpose is to prepare adult learners who are working in healthcare, public health, private health, insurance, healthcare billing and payment, and other health-related businesses to understand the issues that are so important in healthcare. It's an opportunity for us to help train people who don't yet have their degree or who have a degree but don't have this kind of focused healthcare education, and it's opportunities for them to increase their pay, be promoted, go into management roles. So people who might have come into a business at an entry level, and it's an opportunity for them to rise. So today with us, we have Dr. Andrew McCart, I believe. Andrew, are you here? Andrew, are you here? Okay.
Yes, hello, I am here.
And if you have any questions for him about this program, he's the program director and willing to answer any questions you might have. The Senate approved this at its last meeting on September 2nd.
Okay, are there any questions by any board? Yes, I guess if you're not speaking, if you can mute, I'm getting feedback. Are there any questions for Professor Bain or for Dr. McCart? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the creation of the certificate in healthcare leadership as presented?
So moved.
Dr. Burse, I hate to interrupt, but John Chilton has his hand up.
I can't see him. Okay.
It's showing up on the screen that he had a hand raised.
Okay. Let's go back. John?
Yeah, I must have hit a bad button here. I apologize.
My apologies as well then.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Our next item is the approval of a revised personnel document for the university libraries. Beth, will you brief us on this recommendation?
Sure. This is the library's revision of their own annual review process. In the past, the library's process was more Byzantine and complex than it needed to be, and more complex than most other units' annual reviews. So they decided that taking some burden off themselves would be a great idea. They simplified the process and made it more efficient, I believe. So it's really just a matter of simplifying the process and to make it more in line with what other units do already. So this one, I think, is fairly non-controversial, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. It has been reviewed by University Council and by my Office of Faculty Affairs, and I've reviewed it as well. So if there are any questions.
Are there any questions from anyone? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the university library's personnel document as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second that this be approved. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Next on our agenda is a report from Student Government Association President Sabrina Collins. Sabrina, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. I wanted to let you all know, first of all, my background might look a little different than usual. Today, SGA is holding space for students in the University Quad. This is a space for students to get support. We've got some staff counselors here, so please excuse my t-shirt. It is a Louisville t-shirt, though. So and any background noise you might hear, it just didn't sit right on my conscience not to be here while staff were holding the space and while students were grieving. So holding it from our nice tent outside of the library. But Jake, if you want to go ahead and pull up the slides, we can go ahead and get into what I've got for everybody today. Let's see. Okay, so if you want to go ahead to the next slide. So because of COVID and everything that's been going on this summer, SGA has been more engaged over the summer than typical. So we've already had a lot of things going on that I wanted to share with you all. Normally, you know, we would just now be getting into the start of some of our goals and achievements and things, but it's been a very eventful summer. And so over the summer, SGA created the first diversity and inclusion committee that we've ever had through our student senate. Which also includes non-Senate representation. So that's going to be very involved in everything that we do, every resolution that's passed through the Student Senate, and those are all compensated positions as well. We've covered the cost this summer so that no student would have to pay to access the Student Recreation Center since it opened while quarantine was happening. So that was something that we were really happy to provide for students. We also launched the SGA Cares Hotline, so it's easier than ever to reach SGA in an online format like we're in. We updated our SGA website, so it has a new design and it's ADA compliant. I'm really excited about that one. We transitioned all of our fall programming to an online format, advocated for flexibility for students who felt unsafe coming back to campus this fall, and advocated for more widespread COVID testing and frequent updates to the dashboard. So those are just kind of some of the highlights of what we've done thus far. And I'm really excited to tell you all about some of our other priorities moving forward. So what I've got here is the 2020-2021 SGA administration is committed to creating equity and access for a student-centered campus. So that is really the overarching theme that everything that we do this year has really been focused on equity and leveling the playing field for our students. And so I hope that you can see that in what we've done and some of the goals I want to walk you all through next. Okay, so the next slide, I put headshots in here since not all of our top four could be with us. You know what I look like, but it looked funky on the format if I didn't include my own too. So there you go. So I'm obviously our student body president. So some of my goals for this upcoming year are to personally convey student concerns to university administration. So I've done that via the emails that go back and forth between students, elevating those to administration, and through any seat that I hold at the table and committees, being able to elevate student concerns, since it's harder for students to do that with the way that everything is set up right now. Ensuring that SGA is an accessible space for students. So I mentioned the SGA Cares hotline, but also just increasing our social media presence so that students know how to get a hold of us and that they can keep us accountable, keep us on track, and give us new ideas. Reassessing the SGA budget to align with COVID priorities. So we were able to contribute additional funds to the Dean of Students Emergency Fund, which has gone to students who were struggling to make some of the ends meet with this semester. And so we made a huge contribution there, but also made additional contributions to the student food pantry and other need-based areas that, we were able, with less programming, we were able to put more of our budget, kind of put our money where our mouth was on some of these things. Advocating for affordability for students, and then fostering a partnership with the Peace Center to better support survivors of power-based personal violence, especially in light of the new Title IX regulations, and educating students on what their rights are and what some of the new challenges might be with that system. So those are some of my main priorities, not an exhaustive list, but some of the highlights. So Jake, if you want to go on. So Lexi Rakes here is our executive vice president, and some of her goals coming up are the creation and implementation of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So that is going to be under her purview. She's heading that up. Over the summer, we did an anti-racism education initiative throughout the month of July, where we discussed Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist, and some other mixed media to make it accessible and affordable for everybody. But we'll be doing more of that to come. Lexi's been working on that with our DEI committee. Fostering partnerships with diverse student organizations across campus, and advocating for better diversity and implicit bias training across campus, including university police and other staffing, are some of her main goals. And then next we have Ben Barbary here. His goals are to evaluate the Cardinal Core diversity metrics, implementing elements of racial equity and justice into the Cardinal Core curriculum at U of L, doing an audit of those diversity outcomes, and creating an online, that should say an online course. Oh, here we go, showcase course, sorry, that explores race through the lens of departments across U of L. So we're hoping to have that implemented coming up. He's also working on creating an income share agreement program, which will be an alternative form of financial aid, hopefully with lower interest rates than private market loans, to make things more affordable for our students. And lastly, ensuring faculty compliance with existing regulations and recommendations. And then next we have Henny Ransdell. She's our services vice president. She's been working really hard this summer to triage student concerns through the financial, material, and institutional challenges. So helping students navigate kind of some waiver processes and making things more affordable, improving sustainable infrastructure and practices. We're really excited about the consumer-facing compost on campus, the free store that's been around for a long time, but has had some challenges with space and things like that. And then the sustainability awareness across campus. Another thing that she's been working on is beginning the L Trail construction. I've got a little asterisk there because I wanted to remember to talk about the fact that we do have grant funding for that through the state, but it's been held up. Well, makes sense with some of the stuff going on, but we're really trying to push to get that done, especially as, everything going on, it would be nice to have that on campus as, some of the safety issues and just better lighting. So what that would be was these little blue lights on the sidewalk that would be across campus. We have them in some spaces, but we want to expand that project. So we're working on that. And that was a part of the audit that Jasper presented to you all back in July, I believe. And then lastly, improving bike infrastructure to prevent theft. That's a big issue on our campus, and expanding campus housing through 3 current projects that are in the works. So that's the last slide that I have. I'm happy to take any questions from anyone. Those are some of our big priorities for the year. But obviously, like I said, that's not an exhaustive list. SGA has been doing a lot throughout the last couple of months and will continue to do so throughout the year to make sure that the student experience at Louisville is just as good as ever. So with that, is there any questions? I believe you're muted.
Oh, I just unmuted it. Jumps back on its own. Are there any questions from any board members for Sabrina?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment about the scope of the work. I think it's extremely important at this time. And I'm always concerned about outreach to students as we go through trauma and different things in the course of the year. So I commend you on what you have presented today. And I think all of that is necessary. So thank you for what you have put out for us to look forward to as we go through the year.
Thank you.
Any others? Okay, thank you, Sabrina. Look forward to an exciting year. Having no other business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Raymond. Diane, we're ready for the next committee if you are.
Okay. Well, welcome to the Finance Committee and good afternoon. I will now call the roll of the committee. Diane Medley here, Scott Brinkman.
Here.
Raymond Burse.
Here.
Sabrina Collins.
Here.
Krista Wallace Boaz.
Here.
All right, having determined a quorum present, I'd like to call this meeting to order. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes from the June 25th, 2020 meeting. May I have a motion from a committee member to approve these minutes?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify aye.
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 Any opposition or abstention? Okay, the motion carries and the minutes stand approved. Our next item of business is the approval of a cost variance in the HVAC renovation project at the Speed School. Dan, would you brief the committee on this situation?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Back in April, the board approved a resolution for us to do about $800,000 worth of work in the Speed School related to the heating and ventilation and air conditioning system. It's an old building. It was built in 1942. After that approval, we sought bids, and based on those bids and the result of the inspection of the facilities, we've identified about another $415,000 of costs that are going to be necessary to help make these repairs possible. Old building, as you start to add new things, there was more retrofitting than originally anticipated. There was a little bit of asbestos, and also we had to upgrade some of the filtering system from what we had contemplated back in April. We will the difference of about $415,000. We will roll it in to some 10-year financing that we have with PNC, an existing financing arrangement we have with PNC. It'll result in about a $49,000 per year increase to the debt service, and that will be funded from our facilities area. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Dan. May I have a motion to approve this cost variance for the Speed School HVAC renovation project as presented?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? If not, please indicate that you're in favor of this by signifying aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition or abstention? Okay, that motion carries. All right, our next agenda item is our financial update from Dan Durbin, our CFO. Dan, take it away.
Yes, ma'am. Before I get into the agenda, I would like to also welcome Trustees Porter, Cornish, and Dr. Schultz. It's a pleasure to have you here, and it's my pleasure and my honor to be the CFO here. I try to keep these things as informative as possible, but I must admit that I do strive for boredom, and what I mean by boredom is consistency and predictability. So, with that in mind, let's let's go back to June 30th and see how things went. Let's see here. Oops, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. I apologize. Update 2020. Okay, let's try this again. I apologize. Here we go. Okay. Our state fiscal year ended on June 30th. And our audit is nearly complete. It's been underway since we actually even before the books closed. And I wanted to take a few minutes to provide you with an update on the audit itself and the financial results that the audit will show. From an audit perspective, the audit itself, again, it's on time and it's in process. We've had no disagreements with the auditors. And the other thing that I'm quite proud of is the fact that we had several significant deficiencies identified by the auditor last year, and some of them were repeat deficiencies. For example, exit conference timeliness for Perkins loan recipients, and also lack of approval of employee timesheets. I am very proud to report that all of those deficiencies, those significant deficiencies, have been cleared. They will not be repeated this year. We've through the course of last year, we've mitigated those and we've taken care of them and built processes to take care of those deficiencies. The second thing is you typically see one audit for the university, and it's more of a financial audit and a compliance audit on federal programs. And this is more of just an FYI, because of some late federal regs, we will have two audits this year, one for the financial statements and one for the compliance. We do expect both of those audits to have clean opinions. And we do plan on sharing more of the financial information with you when we have the audits complete. They are going through quality control right now with the auditor, CLA, Clifton Larson, and we want to make sure that we have all the categories and the amounts locked down before we share final numbers and final comparisons with last year. But what we will share with you is something that we think is about probably 99.9% of what you will see when the final audit comes out. We're some things may move around category to category, but we think the bottom lines and the margins and the assets and the liabilities that you'll see in totality will repeat themselves with the final audit. Just a couple of reminders before we jump into some numbers. These are accrual-based. Full accrual-based audit financial statements, which means they measure commitments, not dollars, not cash-based, but commitments of revenues and commitments of expenses. And it's also based on governmental accounting standards policies, which measures economic value. You'll see a term called net position. That's net value, the value of everything we own, ranging from the buildings to the cash, to our investments, to our receivables and our payables. So those are two important concepts that I ask you to keep in mind as we go through the statements, because the importance of those will be apparent here in a few moments. The other piece is that our activity was heavily influenced by a couple of things. As you know, we purchased a healthcare enterprise last November, and you'll see some of the impacts of that in these statements. And you'll also see some impacts of COVID-19. And finally, just to kind of cut to the chase before we see the numbers, about 15, 16 months ago, we set out to balance with a balanced budget. We approved a balanced budget with the board. We worked really hard through the end of March to keep a balanced budget. COVID-19 emerged, and we felt that we could risk that balanced budget by about $39 million. We implemented a lot of mitigation strategies. Campus went through a lot of pain, a lot of effort, but pulled together. And I am very proud to report that we pulled this thing back to, we ended the year with a actually slightly above a balanced budget, a positive number. So with that in mind, as we look at revenues and expenses, we've generated about $1.2 billion of revenues last year, again, accrual-based. And that 1.2 was really fueled by a couple of things. Number one is the health system pledged about $37 million of enhanced mission support to the university. They declared that after they closed their books in July, but because they declared it against their last year's numbers, it has to go against our last year's numbers. It is an accrual. It was a pledge of $37 million. And that $37 million is to be received on cash over a 3-year period. $17 million in the current fiscal year, $10 million next year, and $10 million the year after that. The other piece that of the healthcare enterprise that influenced our numbers was the value of capital assets, the capital revenues that you see on that second shaded line of 141. About 132 million of that was the value of donated health facilities, namely Jewish Hospital, Fraser Rehab, and Peace Hospital. Those were the system was purchased by the new system was purchased by our existing health system, but those assets, those buildings, were donated to the university so that the system could generate enhanced Medicaid reimbursement because they're owned by the university. So there are two pieces on the revenue side that again heavily influenced the outcome of our financials. On the expenses, we ended the year with just a touch over $1 billion worth of expenses, and undoubtedly those expenses were less due to the activity of COVID-19. We had some increased expenses, but again, with the $39 million mitigation plan, we also reduced some expenses in several areas. So from a total increase in net position, which is that net value, we ended the year at $184 million greater. With an increase in net position, an increase in net value. But again, 141 million of that is the value of those buildings, the bricks and mortar that were donated to the university, and also the $37 million pledge that happened in July from the health system. The pledge, not the cash. When you filter those two out and get to the answer of what was our true kind of normalized operating margin in 2020, it was $5.9 million. And that's the number, that's the slot that we were working toward break even, towards zero. So we ended up about 0.5% better than we'd expected. Any questions?
Dan, I just want to congratulate you and your team for this outcome. I know it wasn't easy, and I think the key to it was you struck quickly, made some really good decisions early, and didn't avoid some of the harder decisions. So the whole Board of Trustees needs to really thank you for taking this action.
Well, I first of all, I appreciate that, but second of all, it's much more than me. The entire campus pitched together on this. I mean, we went through, I think, one of the most difficult times in anyone's history, and we came through this as strong as, or stronger than, a lot of other institutions would have ever dreamt. I mean, this was a team effort from the faculty, the staff, the students, everyone, and I think the actions that we took at the latter part of last fiscal year really helped save this university.
You know, we all know that we have another challenging year ahead of us, so we'll look for your guidance on that as well.
We do indeed. And I'll just shift to the balance sheet for just a second. And again, when we have the audited financial statements, we'll do a little more detailed analysis, but it's been a while since you've had a financial report. And I just wanted to let you know that, you know, we closed last year in very good shape, just slightly above positive, but we did hit our objective of break even. And from a balance sheet perspective, our balance sheet does continue to improve. Our assets, including cash, increased over the prior year just a bit. Our liabilities are up just a little, but the only reason that they're up is because we closed on our bond issue last year, about $42 million for our residence hall. So we've got a good stable balance sheet, and we had a very good, strong, stable change in net assets from a revenues and expense standpoint. So if there are no other questions on 2020, I will move on to 2021. Where is it? Sorry, bear with me there for just a second.
Is everybody on mute? I hear some background noise.
Where is it? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble finding a file here. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble finding the file here.
There you go, Dan. I'll take care of it.
I got it. Thank you, Jake. I apologize.
I think he has it up, Dan.
Yes, he does. There we go. So from a 2021 perspective, again, we strove for a break-even budget, and thus far we appear to be on that path. There's really one area that we need to focus on, and we'll get to that in just a couple seconds. But from a revenue standpoint, our tuition fees are strong. We're doing well. We actually had a slight increase in our enrollment, rather than a little greater than was expected in terms of the budget. So we're running about 6.4 million ahead of last year. Last year was, I'll think of last year as the valley. And remember, last year we started last fall, but we were down. We were about 120 students less than the year before, and we pulled that up to actually flip that to be positive toward the end of the year. So we've, we're measuring this fall against last fall, and last fall was at the kind of the low point of the academic year. So it makes sense that we're 6.4 million greater. That difference will probably smooth out a little bit as we go through the year, but we fully expect to make budget, if not exceed it just a bit on tuition and fees. State appropriation, that's just the timing of when the state allocates the revenues. There are some other revenues that are a little less than last year. Some of them are COVID related. For example, the Early Learning Center, the child care center is a little less than last year. We also have some activities on campus, conferences and things of that nature that didn't happen this year because of COVID that happened last year. So just a natural decrease in that. So of the general funds, we're running about $5 million ahead of last year. When we look at the non-general funds, we're actually a little behind in total, but the research, focusing on some of the subsets, the Research Foundation is about $21 million tracking better than last year. About half of that's attributed to some activities at the Health Sciences Center, because the clinical revenues and some IGT revenues go into the Research Foundation. The most challenging area in the revenue side of things that we have is athletics, and we'll talk about that in a few moments after we go through the rest of the report. But we want to spend a little time. Vince, I think, wants to spend a little bit of time with you talking about athletics. Athletics revenue is about $28 million less through the August of this year as it was same time last year. That's the bad news. The good news is they're still positive on the bottom line. Their expenses are still less than their revenues. But all considered, with the exception of athletics, all of the revenue sources are about where we'd like them to be, or some of them are actually a little bit better than where we'd like them to be. And we always try to attach some detail on some of the variances that you'll see on the second and third page, variances in revenues and variances in expenses. And from a variance on the expense side, salaries and wages are significantly less than last year, about $4.5 million. That is mainly attributed to the PEDS transition. Last March, we moved the entire clinical activity related to pediatrics off of the university's books and onto another set of books onto Norton Healthcare. So we pulled a lot of clinician expense and clinician salary from our books, and it just went away. We also pulled revenue, but we also, the key part to that whole transition was we fixed about a $12 million annual budget deficit because of that action. So that's one reason why fringes or salaries salaries are down. The fringe benefits, you're just seeing the residual effects of the retirement modifications that we had to make to balance the budget, the reductions in the retirement contributions. Financial aid has increased, but that's a timing increase related to some state funds. Those dollars were received actually in September of last year, but this year we received them, we drew them down in August. They were KEYS monies. So all in all, when we start to look at expenses, our expenses are about $7 million, $6.7 million less than last year. Our revenues in total are about $5.3 million, or about $500,000 less, or $255,000 less from last year. So we're tracking through the first 2 months of this year about 6.5 better than last year. So we're certainly on the right track and on the right course to head toward a balanced budget. And again, the details behind the explanation of some of those variances appear on some of the following pages that were included in the board book or the board packet. And but if you have any specific questions, either now or later, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Yeah, I just want to take a brief minute, Dan, and particularly for Al and Diane. We have two Dianes now, Diane Porter. If you remember back in the spring when we first were sending students home and refunding dorm fees, we were looking at a very, very different picture of what this current fiscal year might look like. And I just want to reiterate what Diane said, that taking some very swift, aggressive actions, we are, it's still going to be a tough year, but we are in far better shape than a lot of the other institutions that I at least read and hear about. So I just want to commend you, Dan, and the entire university team for getting on this early and helping us weather this storm as well as possible. So thank you.
You're welcome. Jake, would you mind going back to the very last slide? There's one slide I wanted to also emphasize. I'm sorry. And there you go. The last piece is, I always, up until a couple of years ago, liquidity was a very serious problem for the university. And we've taken great strides over the last 2 years to really build our liquidity and make sure that we're prepared for things like COVID-19. And I'm also happy to report that right at the end of August, our cash that we had on hand was about $211 million, as opposed to about $160 million-ish or so the year before. And as you can see, the red is the current year, black's prior year, and green is the year before, and blue's the year before that. We have steadily increased our cash position. And back to Mary's comments, when we saw trouble coming with COVID-19, we knew that cash was going to be our lifeline on this. So that's exactly what we did, was we made sure that we had ample cash reserves to be able to weather a storm through this. And storm's not over, but I think we're in a much better position than a lot of other institutions found themselves in, because we acted quickly. And again, wouldn't have happened without the board, wouldn't have happened without the faculty, the staff, the students, and all the administrative personnel who made tough decisions and took action to accomplish this. So that.
Did you want to add any more or have Vince speak at this point? Anything related to athletics?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in, Dan, if you want me to do that now.
Yeah. Again, kind of the bad news, good news. The bad news is athletics revenue is about 28 million down from prior, but the good news is they still have cash, number one, and number two is they're still positive through August. And Vince is going to share some of his thoughts in terms of what's happened through August and kind of what they're expecting through the rest of the year. Again, so we can be prepared to make sure that we get through the year in good order.
Thank you. Again, much like Dan said, welcome to trustees Porter and Cornish for joining us and being a part of the board, and as well, Dr. Schultz, get to work with you again. I've got to work with you in some HR activities, so we'll do this again. Related to the revenue on athletics, it's a $28 million deficit in the first 2 months of the fiscal year. This is a time where we'd generally be collecting money related to football tickets and men's basketball tickets and seat donations. And that's really the biggest delta we're talking about here. It's around $22.5 million is right in there. High 22 million is the delta, with football right now being 12.5 of that. As well, the other delta is just right now restricted revenue, which will be down at the bottom of our income statement outside of operating, and it's down about $5 million. So it's pretty easy to look through. It's pretty simple math, unfortunately, related to what's going on with COVID, our ability to host fans in the stadium, the seat donations that go along with many of our premium seats and suites. But that's where we are today. Our projections as we look out, I'd say, first off, as most know, back in April, we were quick to put in some mitigation efforts related to salary reductions with all the senior level execs and head coaches taking 10% of their pay off. Also others at lower levels of compensation, as low as 2% on the sub 100,000 and 5% above that. Coaches, some assistant coaches foregoing bonuses. As you guys know, I'm not going to take a bonus in fiscal year 20 or 21 as well. So we've done a number of things there, but on the operating side, we have 53 less positions in the athletic department. We furloughed another 44 positions for a number of months. And I think that will have an impact. As you'll see, we still have some tail liabilities related to severance that'll run out here. And we had some retirees that came out of that, they elected to retire. And we still have some liabilities to run through September, and then we'll have a pretty clean run rate from there. And that'll have a very positive impact on our ability to mitigate the gap as we move forward. As we looked ahead and thinking about football continuing where it is today, but basketball coming on board, and we try to look at some assumptions. What if there aren't fans? Certainly the arena will submit a plan to the state. It's not our facility, it's the arena to submit that. And we'll be able to determine how many fans we'll have. But we're thinking in the worst case scenario, what if there were no fans? And what would the impact be at that point? How much can we mitigate this down to? And we think it's in that 20 to call it $30 million range. There would be a deficit, a loss for athletics in this year. And, it's certainly taken a variety of tolls on different departments. Some athletic departments have acted later. I'm comfortable we acted sooner. As I wake up this morning and read about Ohio State having a $107 million deficit, being in the range we're talking about certainly feels better. I think Iowa was 75 million. So our thoughts on this, and I've presented this to Dan, thinking about where we're going and getting ahead of it, because PNC is one of our lead lenders in the university and in athletics. We have 3 different debt instruments with them related to the soccer stadium, the Thornton Academic Center, and the Lester degree, and then the Broadcast Center, which is all in total about $12 million of debt. We would have about $3.2 million of debt due on that this year. We did talk to PNC just to, I was proposing consolidating some debt as well as taking on additional term debt. The notion of this is that athletics needs to bear this out. Don't want to look for the university to pitch in and try to solve this issue, trying to keep it away from that. And what if we consolidated the debt, took on additional term debt? What we proposed is a 20-year amortization over 7 years. Certainly would see the interest rate, but I just played around with some lower interest rates, and that if you were at 30 million, you're probably in the 2 million a year. If you're at 40 million, you're probably in the 2.6, 2.7 range that you would have in debt payments over that period of time. We have some liabilities. The idea too is we don't need the cash today. We don't need to take on any additional debt today. We're pretty good cash position in athletics. We do have additional cash payments that are due that would come annually, the Adidas cash payment, as well as Learfield cash payment that comes in October. So as we sit with, call it 15 million of cash, taking on that cash in October, we would not want to pull the lever on something like that. One, we would know a lot more about basketball at the time we would need to do that. So I think we just wait through the season and see where we are, but get into the first quarter of the calendar year next year, and then contemplate what plan we want to take, and we bring that back to the board. But we have still have Coach Petrino's liability, which is hits $2.5 million the next fiscal year, and then that drops off. So ironically, I was trying to think about if we had to replace that liability with a term debt liability, what would that look like? And provide us some flexibility to cover what is a COVID and a one-year revenue issue. I don't think we have a long-term issue here. If what we believe from the health professionals is going to come true with vaccines and so forth. But today, we've got sensitivities we've shared with Dan and the finance team internally as we've gone through this of some worst case scenarios and what we think is more realistic case and how we would intend to solve it. So we'll keep pinching the pennies. I think our group's doing a great job, and I think as we get through the first quarter in September, we'll be able to show more of that. It's a little early, but I think and the other thing too is I mentioned on the PNC front, we'll have the ability to shop, obviously, and think about banks who would be interested in this size facility and would be able to handle such a facility, and we would go from there. But updating today, this is our outlook. Anxious to see how the season goes. I don't take anything for granted these days with COVID and what it means to us when fans are not in the stands, and it has an impact on parking and concessions and our multimedia rights, such as Learfield and others. Happy to answer any questions specific to athletics.
I have one question. Just this probably would be go back to Dan or somebody to kind of comment around. You're talking about getting and I think the idea of getting a bridge loan or a loan to kind of the one-time feature of the pandemic, so it doesn't impact the university, is a good one. But looking at the growing cash position of the university, could the university not be the lender and have that money come over to the university and benefit? And versus, an external third party taking benefit of our money. And, but again, it probably violates some rules that I'm not aware of, but our cash position has grown. And I assume when I see cash, it's cash. It's not over in the foundation being, it's 5 or 6%. It's what free operating cash that you have. So again, that was the first thing that came to my mind. I like the idea of the one-time, loan and then amortize it out over the operations, because clearly I think signaling to the broader university community that the athletic department is carrying its own and not weighing against the other has a strong cultural significance to all of us. And so I would just say if that's something that could be looked at even as a partial solution, it'd be great to have athletic money coming over to help the university in terms of income.
Yeah, and Randy, we've talked about that. I wanted to try to take it on ourselves, frankly, right or wrong, and the board will have an input on that decision, but was trying to get athletics not to dip into what has turned out to be a nice cash position on the university. Dan and I've talked about it, and I've talked with other schools. Clemson is in a similar spot, a lot of cash on the balance sheet, but money's cheap, these days. And if you were going to do it, now would be the time to consider it. So, but I'm certainly open to that. And I know Dan and I have briefly discussed it.
Yeah, and I agree. And the thing that concerns me is we're only, partially into the fall semester, and we've got a long road to go. And my concern is just making sure that we have enough cash if, Lord forbid, something happens that we need to react to it. And as Vince mentioned, cash is pretty cheap now. 2.5%, 3.25%, something around there. So we may not see that for a while. So it just, to us, it made sense to do it externally, have an early payback provision if possible, and then if things clear up, then we can repay it and go back to business as usual.
I get that part of it, but we already have a $50 million revolver with PNC that we haven't touched on the operating side. So, I mean, I think
Randy?
Yes.
That one though has to be paid off every year.
Yeah.
That 50 million, whatever we take. Dan, please,
Yes,
why don't you answer?
Yes, it does. The problem with that is it's for really short term and kind of within the fiscal year. I think what Vince is looking for is something a little longer term. So, that line of credit really doesn't lend itself to I don't think what Vince is looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this, Randy, though I did broach the topic of partial, maybe some term debt and revolver. In athletics, Kim May, we're looking at this because the EULA is an entity of its own, even though it consolidates up under the university. There are state regs that, to Dan and Neely's point, that prohibit the university from taking a revolver more than 1 year and has to be zeroed out at the end of the fiscal year. Athletics looks to be under a different set of regs. It may be able to have a revolver in place if we so choose that would kind of run alongside the term debt. But we would have to, we're vetting that to make sure that is accurate. But if that, again, that's the case, we would put the revolver on the athletic side of the balance sheet.
Got it.
Also,
Thank you.
Also in terms of this, let's not forget our obligation in regards to our bonding and bonding rating and its impact of having that cash there. And the other thing was the problem we've had with Saks around how much cash we had available, which is why we've been building this cash, so we had to address the accreditation issues to maintain it.
And Raymond brings up a good point. We did talk about that, and I did even said, even on the athletics balance sheet, having cash is not all bad. And even if we were to take on a little bit of debt here, where the rate is, so there is a balance in this for sure. And I think we'll be able to, and it's probably going to be in the next 3 to 5 months, we're going to come back and have greater detail, certainly have a better view of where the numbers are, but have greater detail. What's the ideal option for our situation?
Randy, what you asked is absolutely correct, because Ohio State is doing what you're suggesting. Jane Smith is trying to borrow from the university. But as Raymond said, with Saks and with the uncertainty, we're just really, really concerned about cash. But you're right, we looked into that as well.
Yeah, and I just thank you, Raymond and Randy, your suggestions, questions, and reminders. And I just want to assure the trustees, Diane and I got a deeper dive on this from Dan, Neely, and Vince earlier. And I think we should all be very grateful for the fact that, we have an athletic director who is beyond financially astute, and the fact that he and our CFO work so closely together. So, and I know they'll continue to do so. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Vince or Dan related to any of this? Okay, this was for information purposes only, and there's no action on this part, but we do have one more project to be presented for information purposes. So I think that's Vince and possibly Michael is going to help with this.
Yes. So Jake, you gonna pull up that PowerPoint? Before we get started, since I have the opportunity to talk to the board, I just want to thank everyone in terms of the generosity that we have seen, specifically the Board of Trustees members donating to the Student Emergency Fund. We have funded over 600 awards since COVID started and since the pandemic situation. And we've given out from that fund over $500,000. SGA has been generous in awarding those funds. And so I just want to thank you. And the impact that that's had on students individually and collectively is powerful. And I get to see many of the thank yous that come in, and we're getting ready as part of the upcoming campaign in October. We're going to have some videos and some other opportunities for students to be able to share their thanks. But I didn't want to miss this opportunity to thank you all. So we're going to give a little bit of a quick update on housing. For those of you that have been on the board for a couple of years, this is, every 6 months or every year at least, we're giving an update about housing. And that started since 2017 when we completed our housing master plan and really looked at what our needs were. And ultimately, the board decided to go forward with our capital plan, which included building 2 new residence halls. We also, at one point in time, had a project in place that we were exploring with a P3, public-private partnership, for an honors residence hall. We were not able to successfully negotiate something with the business that we felt comfortable bringing before the board. So right now, the 2 projects that we have going forward are the 2 new residence halls that we're building And then I want to give you an update also about what we talked to you about in December, which was a project for housing on the Southeast Corridor. So we are in the end, and Jake, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. We are going to build 2 new residence halls, and we've started this construction already. So if you're looking at this and just trying to get your orientation, this is just outside of the Student Activity Center. You can see the clock tower kind of has that blue triangle look on the top. And so the building on the right is the new residence hall, and then the building on the left will be the second residence hall. So the building on the right is currently under construction. Jake, next slide. So this is just some design so you can see what that will look like. This will include our new cultural center that is being built almost in the exact same location. And the construction schedule is on time. We plan on having a topping off ceremony on November 17th. We weren't able to have a groundbreaking ceremony because of everything with COVID, or we would have invited everybody and had an official groundbreaking. But we are planning on a topping off ceremony that we think right now will be virtual, but it is a way to celebrate that progress that we're making. And I want to recognize we have new members to the board. Our 2 older residence halls that we are tearing down, we had significant problems with those. We had to put some funding into them, but when we looked at the master plan and the dollars, putting more money into those and how unattractive they were for students, and we heard from students that they did not want to live in those older residence halls, this was the most attractive option. So we're excited to be making progress on this residence halls. Next. So you can see again some of the progress of the pictures that are going forward. The Cultural and Equity Center is going to be located in this space, and we'll be able to consolidate their programming into this one location in a central part of campus. You also know from the strategic plan that we have a focus on our living learning communities. And so this new space, it will be home to our Air Force ROTC students. It'll be home to College of Education, living learning communities, our Black Male Initiative, our Porter Scholars, School of Music living learning communities, and Social Work LLC. So we are really trying to, as the university strategic plan has called for, grow those opportunities, because we know those high impact practices also lead to improved student retention and student success. Next. So the goal with the phase 1 is that would be completed for this upcoming fall semester. So fall of 2021, phase 1 would open. And then in phase 2, we will start construction this spring. So we only housed a smaller number of students in Threcold Hall, but we did utilize that. We always have more students in the fall than we do in the spring. So we housed a smaller number, and then we're going to transition some students out that are living in Threcold during the winter break. And we will then begin demolition on Threcold Hall, and we'll start construction on phase 2, the second residence hall, which is scheduled to open in fall of 2022. And then after that conclusion, we will then tear down Miller Hall. So both those older facilities will be raised. Next slide. The Southeast Corridor project, we briefed you all on this in November, and we went ahead with an RFP. And what we have right now is a 128-bed residence hall facility that would be located on Floyd Street. And we would partner, it'd be a partnership. Campus housing really is the lead, but we're working with athletics. Dan and his team is heavily involved on the finance component. And the developer that we are working with, that we're responding to the RFP that we're working with now, would construct the facility, and they would issue the financing for this facility. But University Housing would manage the facility and provide the residential programming. So to our students, it would look no different than all of the other campus housing assets that we currently manage. So in the end, with all of the new residence halls that we are building, we will have a net gain of 488 additional beds. So we're losing some beds with tearing down the older facilities, but we are gaining the additional new beds. And that is with both phase 1, phase 2, and this Southeast Corridor project, that we would still have a net of additional beds, which was part of what we were addressing with the original study that we did for campus housing, that we needed those additional beds. The 128 beds, it's broken up specifically 63 of those will be for student athletes. We will have 10 spots set aside that will be for students, not student athletes, but student managers, other students that are working with U of L athletics. And then we'll have 55 beds that are set aside for other students. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in a second, more about what we have in mind for the living learning community in this facility. And then there's some non-revenue beds that are built in there with resident advisors and a live-in staff position that would be there. So the overall project cost right now that we're working with is $22 million. Athletics has been able to work with and identified a donor who would be able to bring $5 million towards this project. And then the financing would be issued over 30 years. We do have an opportunity to purchase the facility after the 10th year if we want to do that. But that would be the option to the university. And I'm giving you some general details. This is not an action item today. We still need to finalize negotiations with the company that bid on this. And we wanted to, though, make sure and give you an update so you wouldn't be surprised in October when we come forward with the finalized plan, where you get much more detail and you'll see the agreement, and all the finances for the project. But we want to give you a little bit of an idea of the finances. So if you go to the next slide, Dan's going to go over a little bit of the finances for the project.
Sure, thank you. Again, the structure of what we have in front of us right now, and it's not a complete deal. It's not by any means finalized. It's kind of trying to get to the form of a structure to get to that. We're looking at the facility would generate about $1.689 million worth of revenues from student rents. Those room rates range anywhere from $1,000 per month up to about $1,200 per month. There's a couple rooms that are about $1,400. They're the one-bedroom rooms, but all in, it's about a $1,600 or about $1.7 million revenue stream. There's also an allowance of 7% occupant or vacancy for the general students' rooms, 100% occupancy for athletics, but a 7% vacancy for the non-athletic side of the equation.
Which is our normal budgeting for what we do for our campus housing, that 7% vacancy.
Yep. And total expenses, direct expenses of the facility of about $256,000. So the net project revenue would be about $1.4 million. And that $1.4 million would be kind of split, if you will, in 5 ways. One goes back to the developer that basically funds their debt and retires their debt. They also have to pay, the joint venture would also have to pay about $22,000 in property or in taxes and insurance. They also need to fund a $23,000 per year renewal and replacement account for furniture and fixed equipment. And about $248,000 goes back to the university for a ground lease, part of a ground lease payment, and also for some administrative management of the facility. And about another $40,000 goes to the foundation to as representation of payment for a ground lease. The foundation owns part of the ground. The foundation and the university own part of the ground. So we would split the ground lease between the university and the foundation, and the foundation's piece of the ground lease would be about $40,000. So that's kind of the flow down, or the waterfall, if you will, of the revenues, the expenses against those, and then the payment to the joint venture as it's envisioned right now, and then the distribution of that payment from the distribution of those funds from the joint venture. So if you could flip to the next slide, Jake. Okay. Whoops. Jake?
Oh, whoops. Maybe it froze. Dan, maybe you just want to go ahead and, oh, you can't see it there in front of you.
No. So the thing that the kind of the overriding concept from a financial standpoint that we wanted to try to accomplish was to not impact the university's margin. And to do that, to fund that $1.4 million, actually it's not 1.4, it's about 1.1, because remember the university has a piece of that. Part of that 1.4 flows back to the university for administrative costs and also the ground lease for the property it sits on. Currently, athletics through their scholarship program, basically pays non-university facilities for student housing. So that would be money that would come back into this. It's money going out the door now, it's coming back in. Also, students self-pay for their residence halls off campus. Athletic student athletes pay for their housing off campus. That would also come back into this. So the combination of those two items plus the reusing Minority Hall or repurposing Minority Hall as a live-learn community, we fill that back up as those athletic beds shift out and as general students shift out to the other facility. We refill that with students, new students on campus now. So the combination of all of those, we're working to use the combination of all of those to offset that net developer payment to have a zero or a near zero impact to the margin of the university.
So one of the things that I'd mentioned before, and Jake, if you can pull the PowerPoint back up, that'd be great. But if not, we can just talk through this. But the focus on living learning communities as it enhances university student success and retention. And on this project, we think we have a really exciting and unique opportunity in terms of this project being a living learning community. We're working with our sport administration program. And we're fortunate we have Dr. Meg Hancock, who's joining us. She's the Associate Dean in the College of Education for Student Success and Academic Affairs, and also is an Associate Professor in our Sport Administration program. And she's just going to share a little bit about our Sport Administration program and why we feel like making this a living learning community for our sophomore and above sport administration students would be really positive.
Thank you, Dean Martis, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Sport Administration Program this afternoon, and thank you, Athletic Director Tyree. It's good to see you. One of the things that I would like you to know about our Sport Administration Program is it is home to over 500 students, almost 600 students, 400 of which are undergraduate. And the other thing that is so important about our sport administration program is of those 400 undergraduate students, 49.3% are from out of state. Right now, they represent 30 different states and 7 countries. They are 32% Black, Indigenous, or persons of color, which also account for the majority of the racial and ethnic diversity in the College of Education and Human Development. But I think probably
would everybody mute your?
I have no idea. Hang on, I'll call you back.
Okay, would everybody mute yourselves? So
silence is good. So right now, all right, great. Thank you, President Benefides.
Greg, I thought you were going to give the Lou Gehrig speech there for a second.
I think the one final piece that I would like to share with you is that last year our program is nationally renowned, and we've gone up the rankings, the national rankings, bit by bit every year for about the last 5 years. And in May 2020, we were named the #1 Bachelors of Science in Sport Administration in the United States. And to put that into context for you, is there are over 500 undergraduate programs in sport management and sport administration. So we are very proud of our students. We're very proud of the work that our students have done. And when they graduate, they often contribute right here at the University of Louisville or in the Louisville community. So we believe that this living learning community, we know that it is a high impact practice when it comes to student success, when it comes to retention and persistence. We believe that, one, we have the enrollment to support a living learning community of this size, but also we value the impact that it can have on our students in terms of their academic, social, and professional development.
So Dr. Hancock, thank you for joining us. The Sport Admin program recruits students, so many students from all across the country. We think this will just make it more attractive for them to come here. And Vince and his team have committed to unique learning experiences, Vince being in the facility, coaches being in the facility. So students who live here and are part of this living learning community, it's really going to be able to help them have a much broader educational opportunity. Vince, you want to take a few minutes and talk about why you think why this would be beneficial for athletics?
No, certainly. As noted, we've got student athletes in a variety of facilities. The men's basketball team resides in Minardi Hall today on a standalone basis, and then takes up 17 of the 38 beds over at Minardi. All due respect to what's going on with our notice of allegations, NCAA issues, Minardi doesn't always have the best stigma these days. But also our women's basketball is predominantly in the 9 facility. We have them elsewhere, and women's lacrosse is elsewhere. But the reason those 3 sports make sense is they're all 3 across the street from this proposed dorm. That's where the Kieber Center is located and where the teams practice. So they would literally be able to walk over to the facility through a crosswalk over Floyd Street. So the facility itself, what I've seen, the renderings is pretty dynamic. Obviously the rooms as well, they somewhat have to be modified like Minardi for the men's basketball team due to their size. The beds are longer, the counters and toilets and all the good stuff you may not care to know about. But I think the other thing, when we first talked about this, Dean Martis and I talked about it, and Meg and I got to talk about this, briefly, was, about a year ago, was the sports administration, because we utilize a number of the grad spads and sports administration students as our interns in athletics. Many of them come up through that program, and we do quite a bit. And when Meg will let me lecture, I'll lecture in the sports administration program. But, we've talked about some sports science opportunities and other things we could potentially do on campus, particularly when we hired Dr. Ivy last year in the athletic department. So we work closely together. It seems like a natural fit. It obviously would be a first-class facility. Recruitment wise, no doubt with what we're dealing with today in our men's basketball program, this would help on the way out of dealing with that issue. But it's an exciting, it'd really be, and I'm not trying to oversell it. After you see it, we got pictures here. It's kind of a trophy facility. It's something would be along Floyd Street. And we love the combination of the, obviously with the SPAD program, and then our ability to not just have a men's dorm, if you will, but to put them together. And I know that Kansas just did a new dorm, I think right when Neely was departing Kansas, and Kentucky did a men's basketball dorm. But our thought here was to have men's and women's programs along with the women's lacrosse program. And to be honest, when we looked at the value, as we were able to go out and talk about donors interested in this project, supporting it, we thought if we had enough donors in it to make it nice enough and frankly, subsidize the rate to get it down to where it's comfortable for the students as much as student athletes, our budget from an income statement would be, there wouldn't be a tangible difference. We're already paying for these beds today, and the minority beds are pretty expensive, higher than what we're contemplating here. And then the other facilities that student athletes live off campus varied slightly less than what we're talking about here. But in a hybrid, if you combine them together, we're about where we are today and what we pay out in scholarships.
So along with recruiting student athletes and for the sport administration program, we know that a successful athletic program also enhances our profile and attracts students to the university. I've talked to students before who first found out about the University of Louisville or thought about applying to the University of Louisville when they saw us compete, in the Sugar Bowl or in the Final Four. So I think there's a lot of benefits how this would enhance. So Jake, you're going to go on to the location, the next slide. You can see on the map here, if you look at the bottom in that gray area where it looks like a little bit of an L there, that is the location of where that would be. And it's just across from the Cooper Center. So it's going down Floyd Street. You would have just, if you're heading south, you would have passed under Eastern Parkway. So you can see its proximity. It's still convenient to be able to get to the heart of campus so students can be able to walk. A lot of the sport administration classes are located in the Student Activity Center, which is up there on the top right. So it's just walking down Floyd Street to be able to get there. So we're excited about the location and the fact that for men's and women's basketball and for lacrosse, it's just across from their practice facilities. Next, we want to share you some schematics just so you can get an idea of what this would look like and how it could continue the beautification of Floyd Street. So that's a picture of the facility as you're looking at it on the south side. And you can see that it does have the walkway across to the Cooper Center. And go ahead, you want to go to the next slide. This is just an internal rendering of what that open area in the facility would look like. And again, this is going to be a top of the line facility that we will, students will be excited to live in this. This will be, an incredibly nice place for students to be able to live. And with athletics coming forward with donation funds and helping with funding the facility, then that's going to be able to keep the cost lower for the other students that are paying for rent in the facility. Next slide. This gives you an idea of what the units will look like. Most of these are doubles, so kind of like small apartments, really. So if you look at that unit type A, that's what we think that, that they would look like. So students would have their own bedroom and their own private bath, but then they would share this common area that is in the middle. There are a few singles, just for spacing reasons, and then we'll have some premium rooms that have maybe a nicer view or some other locations, but most of the rooms will look like unit type A.
I don't know if we're giving you too much information. We're kind of excited about this. If you want us to speed up, we will.
Yep. And that's it. Neely, that was perfect. That was right on cue. We're speeding up. Our next steps, our plan is to continue to work with the partner to finalize the deal, finalize the financials, and then be able to come back to you with the final results of the RFP, the project details, with the hope that we'll get everything in order and be able to seek your approval at the October Board of Trustees meeting. So with that, we'll just stop. And if you have any questions, be happy to answer.
Michael, just to add a little bit of clarity there, if this project were to make its way through proper approvals, the groundbreaking would be somewhere in the beginning of next year. It would be open for a fall semester of 2022. The other thing to highlight is, obviously, we talked about significant fundraising where some donors have donor intent towards this facility. We did negotiate naming rights related to the facility that we would maintain. It would not stay with the developer, so that would obviously avail us the opportunity to raise those dollars against that ability.
Okay, any other, this is for information purposes only. We don't have a firmed up plan. And I think it was hopefully clear that this would have, other than having more dorm capacity, which I know Michael has said they can easily use, it does not affect athletics, correct, Vince? It doesn't put any more burden on that group to pay.
No, I mean, we already have to pay these bed rates, whether they're a university facility or outside the university facility.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
Dan, I would make a couple comments. Just my department, I would echo everything that Meg said. My department has worked closely with the SPAD department for years with internship opportunities and things, and it really is an outstanding program. And then going back to the first residence hall that we discussed at the start of the presentation a while ago, I just want to let everybody know our housing department's doing a really different and I think a really great project for our students this weekend. They can stop in the SAC in the ballroom, and a lot of the potential furniture choices will be set up, and students can vote on the style and type of furniture and things that will go into the new residence hall. I think that's I haven't seen that done before. I think it's a great program.
All right, I'll kick this back to Dan. Is there anything else do we need to report on?
No, the other thing I'd add, since we had some technical difficulties with the PowerPoint, we'll send the PowerPoint out to the board right after the meeting, but we wanted to kind of walk through the project, explain it first, and then follow up with a PowerPoint. And then before the October meeting, we'll be sending the definitive documents and some more detailed financials and things out.
Okay. All right, having no other business to come before the committee, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor signify aye.
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 All right, the Finance Committee meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Diane. Mary, you can take it away.
All right, so we have one more committee meeting to go, and this should be fairly brief. So thank you for joining the virtual meeting of the Executive and Compensation Committee of the Board of Trustees. I'll now call the roll. Mary Nixon, I'm here. Raymond Burse.
Present.
Diane Medley. Diane.
I'm here.
Thank you. Jim Rogers.
Here.
Krista Wallace Boaz.
Here.
Having determined a quorum present, I'd like to call this meeting to order. The first item of business is approval of the consent agenda. And I just want to be clear for the record that in your pre-reads, there were a number of items that were on there that we decided that we would just have them for discussion only today and vote for them at the October meeting. So I just want to be sure you know when we get to the consent agenda, what is still on it, which is the approval of the election of secretary, the approval of the certificate in healthcare leadership, the approval of university libraries personnel development document, and the approval of this speed school HVAC renovation cost variance. And so that is the list. As the rest of them are going to the October 28th meeting. So does anybody have anything about any of the items we're going to vote on that they want to discuss further?
And the minutes.
Oh, and the minutes. Yes, thank you. Hearing none, may I have a motion from a committee member to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify aye.
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 Any opposition? Abstention? Motion carries. Just a reminder that the items that we didn't vote on in the consent agenda will be on the October 28th agenda. So if you have questions, concerns, suggestions, they were on Diane's Finance Committee or Scott's Governance Committee. So please reach out to them so that we're well prepared when we get to them. The next is the report of the chair, which this will be very brief. I just want to give a quick shout out to the whole U of L team for getting our fall semester off to what I believe is a stellar start. I'm really proud of how everybody's worked together and how well our students are behaving versus what I'm seeing on some other campuses. So you all should really, really feel good about where we are, unless something's happened in the last 24 hours that I do not know about. And then just also for the trustees, just for your support and patience, because doing this all virtually, it's not easy, but we're getting it done. So then I would just lastly like to add a special thanks to Krista for all her good work and leadership as she's been with us, and we will miss you. But we look forward to working with you, Dr. Schultz. And that concludes my remarks. Anybody else have anything they wanted to bring before the board? All right, having no business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all and have a good rest of the week.
Thanks, everybody.